much know who I am. I'm a guy on Wednesday nights that does the skits for the kids. Put on different costumes, wear different hats. Tonight I'm wearing a preacher's hat, so to speak. Hope my halo's on straight there. Anyway, been wondering what I was going to preach to you. I'm not really used to preaching. I have done it before. I'm more of a teacher than I am a preacher. But you know, there's something I was thinking about. Actually, something I found that I thought I'd lost. And it's something that really hasn't been taught on since the mid-1980s. And I'm really kind of shocked it hasn't been, because it should have been. And it's probably the reason we have all the problems in this world right now is because it wasn't preached on. It's something that was given to me at a church I was going to. Can't remember which one it was. It was a newsletter from the Word of Faith Outreach Center in Dallas, Texas. Big outfit. And what it's basically about is communism. Don't hear that word too much in churches anymore, do you? And that's why we got problems with communism, because it wasn't mentioned, it wasn't taught on.
They used to preach about it all the time.
That's what I'm saying. Back in the 80s, it was a big deal. And anyway, this newsletter was really interesting. Now, you can get all kinds of news about communism in the world from your cable news and your talk radio shows and stuff, but you know, they don't do it from a Christian perspective, though. That's where they're missing it, and that's where the church is missing it, too. Now, hopefully this will work. Before I start that, I'm going to read you a scripture here. And this is in Proverbs chapter 29, verse 2. When the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. But when the wicked bear rule, the people mourn. I hear a lot of people in America mourning today. And that's probably why right there. We know what's going on. We're not that ignorant. As a matter of fact, we're not ignorant of what Satan's up to too. Now this is in 2 Corinthians 2:11. Satan should get an advantage of us, for we're not ignorant of his devices. Now I'm not talking about looking for a devil on every doorknob. We don't go out looking for the devil, but we need to be aware of what he's up to. Now, getting back to this newsletter. I'll just go ahead and read some of this to you. Now, this was actually written by a Dr. Cleon Skoskin. He's a former assistant director of the FBI. He wrote a book called The Naked Communist. It was published in 1959, so this information had been around for quite a while. Now, back then, I was only 4 years old. I didn't really know much about it until I got a little older. But anyway, it's a list of all the goals that communism had. And since then, well, you're going to be shocked when you hear some of this stuff. Let me just read some of the stuff on here on the top. It says, the Soviets have always operated on this strategy of patient gradualism. That means they have a thing, I can't remember what the word's called, but it's where they take 2 steps forward, and when they're confronted, they take 1 step back. Eventually, they got to where they want to go. And that's what they meant by gradually. Now, their goal is to conquer the world, but do so gradually that the West barely notices the trend, which, sad to say, we really haven't been paying much attention here over the years. Now, using this strategy, almost half the population of the world has fallen under communism domination just since World War II. Eastern Europe, China, big one. North Korea, big one. Cuba, still communist. Southeast Asia, Angola, Mozambique, Ethiopia, South Yemen, Rhodesia, Afghanistan even, Nicaragua, with Central America, Mexico, and a dozen other countries on schedule for the next 2 to 3 years. That was written in 1959. Now, most Americans have never discerned the seemingly isolated revolutions in these various countries as a well-coordinated, long-term global strategy. In the late 1950s, the Soviets laid down a set of 35 goals for undermining America, which they sought to implement in their long-term strategy for the communization of the United States and the world. Now, these communist goals were reprinted in an excellent book by, I mentioned this earlier, Dr. Cleon Skoskin. back in 1959. Now, Stalin, he was that Russian guy, some of you kids, I don't know if they're teaching you this stuff in school or not. He wasn't a very nice fella. He once said that America is like a healthy body, and its resistance is threefold. It's patriotism, it's morality, and it's spiritual life. Now, if we communists can undermine these three areas, America will collapse from within. Consider that quote as we examine these goals. And I'm going to go through these one by one with a biblical perspective. Now, that very first one, U.S. acceptance of coexistence as the only alternative to atomic war. Well, I think they got that one done. Remember Bill Clinton? U.S. willingness to capitulate in preference to engaging in atomic war. Now, do you kids know what that word means? Capitulate? Some adults probably don't know what that word means. It means to surrender often after negotiation, to cease resisting. Well, Mr. Biden, seems like we did a pretty good job over in Afghanistan, didn't we? You just let all them people over there die. And this is not meant to be political, but it is the fact. Now, develop the illusion that total disarmament by the United States would be a demonstration of moral strength. Isn't that what our government's trying to tell the rest of the world? Oh, we won't hurt you. As a matter of fact, if we ever try to attack you, we'll give you a heads-up warning even. And that's a fact. Permit free trade between all nations regardless of communist affiliation, regardless of whether or not items could be used for war. Let's see now, where do we get most of the things we buy today? Where are they made? I know, China. Let's see now, they're a communist country, aren't they? Are you learning that in school, by the way, kids? Now, extension of long-term loans to Russia and Soviet satellites. We're constantly giving Russia wheat and all kinds of... We've been doing that for decades now. Taking care of communist countries when we neglect our own people here. Provide American aid to all nations regardless of communist domination. We do that with countries down in South America. Mexico's socialist. We do a lot of business with them. Canada, another socialist country. Socialism, actually, kids, is just one step away from communism. I bet you they're not teaching that in school either, are they? Now, provide American aid to all nations regardless of communist. Okay, I just said that one. Okay, grant recognition of Red China, admission of the Red China to the UN. Now, let's see, now, when did that happen? It wasn't all that long ago. Now, back in '59, a lot of these things hadn't happened yet, but so far, everyone I've read so far has already happened. Allow the Soviet satellites individual representation in the United Nations. That's happened. Resist any attempt to outlaw the Communist Party. Now, back in the 50s, they had a senator called McCarthy. They crucified that poor fella because he tried to warn us of all this stuff, and they just crucified him. Nobody wanted to listen to him. He warned us, and he was right. Do away with all loyalty oaths. Oh, there's a big one. There's a big one. You ever been to a ball game now lately? They don't even let you pledge allegiance to the flag or sing the national anthem. Now, a lot of people are standing up now. That's a good thing. That's civil disobedience. Nothing wrong with that. But some of these athletes paid $1 million a year. They refuse to put their hand over their heart. That's pretty much what that says. That's another thing they did. Continue giving Russia access to U.S. Patent Office. Well, I don't know so much about Russia, but I sure do know that Communist China, where do you think they get all the ideas to make all this junk they sell us? Most of it they stole from us. They didn't actually buy it. Capture one or both political parties in the United States. Woo! Boy, that's a big one there, isn't it? You think that's happened yet?
Yeah, they're going.
Use technical decisions of the courts to weaken basic American institutions. by claiming their activities violate civil rights. Well, let's see. I kind of think that one's happened too, hadn't it? Oh, here's a good one, kids. Get control of the kids. Is that what it says? Pretty much. Might as well say that. Get control of the schools. You know that Abraham Lincoln, what he said a long time ago, I've always stuck with this in my head. This is why I have a burden for children. He said, the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. Communists know that too. They want to rule the world. So they want to get you when you're real little in school. So they want to get control of the schools, use them as a transmission belt for socialism and current communist propaganda. Soften the curriculum. How many kids learn cursive anymore? Do kids learn cursive in school? Or do you even know what the word means? How about mathematics? How about social studies? Do they even teach social studies anymore? I'm not even sure. We used to have a thing called civics when I went to school. Well, they soften the curriculum. That means the stuff they're teaching you, they're trying to dumb you down is what they're trying to do. Get control of teachers' associations. Ooh, boy, they've done that one already. You're a teacher, you should know. Put the party line in textbooks. Oh, there's another good one right there. They certainly have. Very clever. Gain control of all student newspapers. Now, I'm sure you go to any college right now, if they got a newspaper, it's going to be loaded with woke, stupid woke. Where they came up with that name sounds kind of dumb to me anyway. I think they're sound asleep myself. Use student riots to foment public protest against programs or organizations which are under communist attacks. Well, we've had a lot of riots here in the past couple of years. Have you noticed that? A lot of those 21-year-olds, supposedly 21-year-olds, most of them probably are college kids, they have this thing in their head, they think communism, it didn't work because we know a better way of making it work. No, they don't. They're useful idiots is what the communists call them. There's something else you don't hear in school anymore either. They used to teach us in school. The communists would call people that helped them out useful idiots, and when they got done using them, they'd kill them. Oh, this next one. Infiltrate the press. Get control of book review assignments, editorial writing, policy-making positions, the press. There's another thing, too. The secular presses, hey, are definitely not on the church's side, that's for sure. Gain control of key positions in radio, TV, and motion pictures. There's another one they've done. So far, everything I've read here, they've already accomplished. And a lot of this one underneath your noses, and a lot of you might not even be aware of some of these things. Oh, this next one. Internationalize the Panama Canal. Guess who's in control of the Panama Canal now? Any idea, kids? They ever teach you this in school? You know where the Panama Canal is even at? You learn geography. See, they softened down the curriculum. You don't even know where that's at. It's in between North America and South America. There's a small strip of land there where they got a canal that goes to that connects the seas. Now, we used to be in control of that. Guess what communist country's in control of it now? Want to take a stab at it? Begins with C, ends in A. China. That happened just a few years ago. Continuing discrediting American culture by degrading all forms of artistic expression. An American communist cell was told to eliminate all good sculpture from parks and buildings, substitute shapeless, meaningless forms. Now, they've actually taken that one step farther. They're actually removing statues now, like of General Lee, any of our Civil War heroes. They're taking them out. Shoot, even that, what was it, Christopher Columbus. Why in the world they want to dump that statue, I have no idea. But these stupid woke people, man, this is what they been learning. Control art critics and directors of museums. Our plan is to promote ugliness, repulsive, meaningless art. Now, I don't know if some of you kids have heard about this, but there was an artist several years ago. He did something where he had a cross in a jar of urine, and he posted that in a museum saying it was art. That's disgusting. That's what they're doing by promoting ugliness and meaningless art. I've seen a lot of art that looks meaningless to me anyway. Whatever happened to Rembrandt and all those guys? That was art. Even some of your cartoons are kind of weird looking. Eliminate all laws governing obscenity by calling them censorship and a violation of free speech and free press. You know, when I was a kid, you watch TV, you wouldn't hear some of the words that you hear all the time. I mean on regular TV, not cable. Even some of the radio stations, they're saying words now that you would have never heard when I was a kid. So that was one back then, hadn't happened yet, but it has definitely happened now. I'd say probably in the last 20 years, it's got really bad. Stay away from that anyway. You don't need to be watching anything that has filthy language in it. Break down cultural standards of morality by promoting pornography and obscenity in books, magazines, motion pictures, radio, and TV. That kind of goes along with that last one I just said. That's rampant. You can't hardly go see a movie anymore that has some of that stuff in it. And where they came up with these ratings, PG-13 and all that stuff, I don't even think adults should watch some of that stuff. It's just plain nasty. You know, there's some Pentecostal churches, they don't believe you should even have a TV in your house. Maybe they got something going there. Present homosexuality, degeneracy, and promiscuity as normal, natural, healthy. Boy, that's got real prevalent here in the past couple of decades, especially in the past 10 years. They got gay parades now. When I was a kid, if they did that, I think there might have been some lynching going on. Not to say that I agree with lynching, but I see their point. Now this next one. Yeah, that's it. This is one of the best ones on here that I think they've really, really got a good hold on. Infiltrate the churches and replace biblical religion with social religion. Discredit the Bible and emphasize the need for intellectual maturity, which does not need a religious crutch. How many churches today? Well, I just heard the pastor say this not too long ago. There's some churches, they got a bar where you can buy beer and stuff or during the service or whatever. Does that sound Christian to you? And there's some churches, that homosexual churches. That's kind of an oxymoron, really. God's not going to accept that kind of worship from them. Anyway, that's another one that got accomplished. Eliminate prayer or any phase of religious expression in the schools on the grounds that it violates the principle of separation of church and state. Now, kids, I want to tell you something real quick. That argument, separation of church and state, it's not even in the Constitution. They don't tell you that in schools anymore, do they? It's not in there. It just means what they're referring to is that the state cannot tell people what kind of religion you can have. That's all that meant. It didn't have anything to do with being separate. And then as for the elimination of prayer, remember this was written in 1959. Back then, schools, they had prayer in school, sure, at the beginning of the day, Pledge of Allegiance, the whole 9 yards. That didn't start until 1962. That's when they took it out of public schools, that you couldn't say a prayer, not even a silent prayer. I think we need to do a little civil disobedience on that one, kids. If they tell you can't say a prayer, you ought to just pray a little louder, I think. Discredit the American Constitution by calling it inadequate, old-fashioned, out of step with modern needs, a hindrance to the cooperation between nations on a worldwide basis. They're constantly doing that, telling our Constitution's null and void, that we don't need to use it anymore, and it's being shoved down these college kids' throats like crazy, and they're falling for it and sink climbing the book. Well, I tell you, it's just getting bad. But that's just another one that's happened. Support the Soviet socialist movement to give centralized control over any part of the culture. Education, social agencies, welfare programs, mental health clinics. Now, I don't know if any of you ever worked in the healthcare business. I know one person has. I have too. It's ran by the state. And they've got some of the dumbest rules and regulations that they put on you. It's like they tell you what to do, and yet they've never done it themselves. But they're the expert. Like, you have to get that shot. No, you don't. There's nothing in the Constitution that says you have to. But they're trying to make you think by propaganda. Remember TV, radio, and all that stuff? That's another communist plot too. Okay, eliminate all laws or procedures which interfere with the operation of the communist apparatus. People don't pay no attention to communists anymore. Eliminate the House Committee on all un-American activities. They did that a long time ago. That's been done. Now here's the good one. Discredit the family as an institution. Encourage promiscuity and easy divorce. Back 70 years ago, if you got a divorce, you were looked down upon. Public shaming. You know how people shame people for all the dumbest things now? Back then, they would do it for actually a pretty good reason. Divorce wasn't that rampant. And look what happened when it did become rampant. Look at all the broken homes we got and the drug problems and all the crime problems because of divorce. And a lot of it was because actually the church kind of messed up there too. I think I mentioned this to you kids before. When I was a kid, went to church, there was a 3-letter word that you never heard uttered in church, which should have been, and that's sex. It's not a dirty word. You need to know that adultery and fornication is wrong. But there you go. That's what the communists want to do. They wanted to emphasize that, oh, there's nothing wrong with it. Emphasize the need to raise children away from negative influence of parents. Ooh, I think they're doing that one too right now. Especially if you're a Christian parent. The government has this saying, from womb to tomb. That's something I heard coined that phrase back in the 80s. Womb to tomb. What they meant by that is, we'll take care of you from the minute you're born to the minute you die. Just let us take control of your whole life. That's actually a communist goal. Overthrow all colonial governments before native populations are ready for self-government. Why in the world we get involved in these countries overseas? They don't want to be a democracy. Actually, did you know, kids, that we're not a democracy? That's something else they don't teach you. We are a representative republic. We the people for the people. Actually, the government, they work for us. We are the government. We're supposed to be the boss. But you see, a lot of people got lazy. Didn't want to get involved in politics. Well, if you don't get involved in politics, you've got no right to complain about anything that's going wrong in this country, man. That's just my opinion. Now, I'm going to read you some scriptures here. The first one is in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 11. I get this page turned here. For they intended evil against thee and imagined a mischievous device. Okay, this is not 2 Thessalonians, I'm sorry. This is Proverbs 29:2. No, sorry, messed up again. Told you I'm not that good at preaching. I'm more of a teacher. Psalms 21:11. For they intended evil against thee, and they imagined a mischievous device which they are not able to perform. Therefore shalt thou make them turn their back, when thou shalt make ready thine arrows upon thy strings against the face of them. Now, if this communism thing keeps going on, we might have to resort to this. You need to meditate what this is really saying. The communists, they intend evil against us. And they've imagined every trick. That's all these things right here against us. But they're not going to be able to perform it because God says, thou shalt make them turn their back. That means we're going to chase after these guys. And when thou shalt make ready thine arrows, that means get armed upon the strings against the face of them. We may have to go to an actual physical conflict because we didn't do what we were supposed to do years ago, warn people against this stuff and take heed of what we were warned about. The Bible warns us. This Cleon Skosen guy, he warned us. There's been tons of books written about this stuff. And the next thing I wanted to mention, let's see if this is next here. Nope. Okay, this one's not actually on screen. I have to read this one. Now, I'm going to tell you something about the Antichrist that a lot of people probably don't know. And I'm not sure if this is a prophecy or if it's a word of knowledge. But before I tell you that, I need to read some scriptures to you. In 2 Thessalonians 2:11, and for this cause God shall descend them a strong delusion, that they should believe a lie. Now also, in the book of Matthew, one of my favorite chapters, chapter 24, verse 24, for there shall arise false Christs and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that, if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect. Now, I'm trying to think of the easiest way to say this, how it came to me. I guess this is the easiest way to say it. The Antichrist and communism cannot coexist. And what I mean by that, remember now, Satan's the one that created the problem of communism in the first place. And the Antichrist is going to come with a solution to it. And it will be such a great thing that I think a lot of people are going to believe he is God like he claims he is. Think about that for a minute. I don't know when the Antichrist is coming, who it's going to be, but I know that that's got to be one of the things he's got to do, because communism, first of all, they don't believe in any deities at all anyway. And it says in the Bible, people are going to worship him like a god. Communists aren't going to do that. They're not going to do that at all. So he's going to have to deal with them in some form or fashion. Now, as for us countries here like England and France and Germany and America and all that, I think he's kind of already got us sewed up, because he's got us all fooled. You don't think that'll happen? Remember 1989 when the Berlin Wall fell down? You kids learn about that in school too? One person, yeah. You know what happened after that? Those East Berliners that were under the communist thumb, they tore down that wall and they got some freedom for the first time in their whole life. But they really weren't free. If you know anything about other countries, I watch international news sometimes to see what's going on in other countries, because they don't report that over here. Sometimes there's stuff they say that's going on over here is a lot better than what we're hearing from over here. That Merkel, I think her name was, some of those people in Germany, they're leaning towards socialism pretty hard, even more than we are here. So communism is not dead. You know, we used to think that when the Berlin Wall came down and Russia was gone and everything, oh, the world's saved now from communism. No, why didn't they just change their clothes, basically, is all they did. They're still communists, and they still have these goals in mind for the world. But they got to be more sneakier about it now. See, it's what we don't see that can hurt us sometimes. And we need to keep our eyes, our spiritual eyes, open. And we need to look up, because your redemption is drawing nigh. Keep in the Bible. This is the only newspaper you need to read, because it's going to be more accurate than anything you hear on TV. I guarantee you that right now. Anyway, there was one thing I was going to bring up. It has nothing to do with all this stuff. I've noticed in the past few weeks something missing. You're all looking at me like a calf staring at a new gate. Actually, there's something I haven't seen for the past 6 weeks. Now, it's something that's been going on since 1996. Chemtrails. Y'all know what a chemtrail is? Crisscrossing, they're just polluting our sky, and who knows what kind of junk was flying down on us. Every day, all the time, you'd see them up in the sky. The past 6 weeks, I haven't seen a single chemtrail. I haven't even seen a contrail, which is a normal contrail. And I'm thinking, now that just seems kind of odd. What was the purpose of it for the past 20 some odd years anyway? Maybe it was something they were trying to give us, because whatever that stuff was floating down here, a lot of people have had breathing, respiratory problems. And just think about COVID for a minute. That's kind of respiratory related too, isn't it? You think maybe those chemtrails might have had something to do with it or keep it from happening? No, I don't know. It's a conspiracy, man. But it's just something I noticed I thought was kind of odd. Anyway, the main thing is I think that the Antichrist, he's going to have to deal with communism. He's already dealt with the church. He's got most of them wrapped up right on his little finger. See, they're out there tickling ears, like the pastor says. They're not teaching sound doctrine. So they have infiltrated the churches, for sure. Not this church, though. That's not going to happen here. I guarantee it. We've got too many smart people here. Anyway, that's all I pretty much got for tonight. I hope you kids and some of you adults might have learned something here. And maybe I'll do this again sometime. I need to practice more.